Gentlemen, it's gone 10:30, so we'll make a start. Do we have any apologies?
Councillor Nicholl.
Item 2, declarations of interest. Councillor Crothers.
Thanks, Leader. A couple of items. I think it's past its sell-by date now, but item 8, and the Lesser Sports Liaison Trust I mentioned as a write-off, but it's well over a year now as being a director there. So just advice on that, and we have an exempt item regarding the Prison Visit Committee. Obviously, Karen's my wife's a member of that. Just take advice on the declarable interest or even possibly conflict of interest there.
Decision in relation to the Leisure Trust, I would confirm declaring an interest would be clearly appropriate. Obviously, it would seem reasonable for the member to stay in the room for that item. Ultimately, your decision. In relation to your wife's position on the Prison Visiting Committee, again, very much your decision, given that she's your wife, but she's an elected member. Again, I would think that you've declared the interest sufficient for you to stay in the room.
Councillor Maitland.
May I declare an interest, please, in item number 8, the write-offs. I was a director of DG Arts Association.
And Councillor Dykes.
I just want to ask for a piece of advice on item number 8 as well. My husband's business does some work with one of the people that are on the list of write-offs, and I just wonder whether or not on that basis I should be declaring an interest. Also on item 6, I just want some information about members who sit on the Theatre Royal Joint Working Board.
Deal with the second one first to you, Chairman. Councillor Dykes, on the basis of the information you provided, my indication would be declare the interest and leave the room. Would be advice on the write-off. In relation to the Theatre Royal, again, if you're a member of the Trust, suggest you declare an interest, but again, you can participate in the debate.
Councillor Carson.
I declare an interest as a member of the Joint Theatre Project Board.
No other hands up. We have a couple of exempt items today. I was planning to take item 14 on the agenda early on in the agenda because of the fact that we have one of the members of the national group here, Chief Executive, and he has a meeting in Edinburgh that he's been put on a commission to go and look at this afternoon. So I would like to take that one so we've got the best advice possible with somebody who's at the table. So I'll take the minutes and then I'll take item 14 and then we'll go through the agenda accordingly after that. Councillor Nicholson.
That's fine, but you need to take 13 first.
Councillor Crothers.
Just in regards to excluding the public, does that mean the members of the public have to leave the room and then come back after that item until such time? Okay, thanks.
Right. If we move on to item 3, minute of meeting of 19th of March. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, it's really, I think there's a lot of debate at this, and obviously the administration have decided to accelerate 250,000 into the 2013-14 budget. But I seem to recall there was a debate on the Appendix 1 and 2 on how we take these forward. There's no costings, there's reserve schemes in that, and I think at the meeting we discussed whether or not they would go to area committee or would be a report coming back here, because we're not really sure which of these are going to go ahead and how much funding is still available for these. So I just wanted clarity on that on the way forward, because there seems to be some confusion over it.
Mr. Crichton.
Yep, understanding the minute sets out in paragraph 7.1, section 3, that a report will be submitted to a future meeting of this committee outlining the options, and I'm sure the issues will be addressed there.
Councillor Marshall.
Now that we're in May, I'm just wondering when that report will be, because obviously we may need to actually approve the lists. So as soon as possible, that report should come to this committee.
It'll be, I would think, to an early committee. We are looking at the accuracy of the minute. My understanding that was the decision that was made, and any matters arising will get an answer to you later. So with that, is this an accurate record? Move on to item 4. Ad hoc subcommittee welfare reform. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, just for point of clarification, on page 31 of 94, under item 6, welfare reform resources, in it, it says the decision was to, rather noted the staff resources currently allocated to welfare reform, and it goes on to say that a report would be presented to an early meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee to identify the appropriate funding resources approach required. I just wondered when that report will be coming forward, you know, what it means by an early report, whether it perhaps should have been at this one even as a late item of business, given the situation of welfare reform, the queuing and us not meeting performance. Leader.
Right. As I stated with the first one, we're here for accuracy. I'm sure it'll be coming to the next meeting of the Policy and Resources. I'll get that written confirmation for you so that you've got it as early as possibility. With that, is it a correct record? Yes. Right. I would now ask that we consider adoption of resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of, and the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973 detailed against each item. So it's exempt information in the paragraph 6, 8 and 9. I'm happy to exclude the public. Right. Councillor Crothers.
Engaging for the sake of the public.
Right then, move on to item 5, which is DG1 alternative arrangements for customers and employees. Here they come. We're ready to start on item 5, DG1 alternative arrangements for customers and employees. Mr. Greason, we have the report in front of us. Is there anything you wish to add at this stage?
Thank you, Leader. Just very briefly, if I may, report provides an update on progress made at the time of writing, and I think evidence is good progress, but that's very much a work in progress, and I would like to emphasise that to members. We're still continuing to finalise staffing arrangements in terms of alternative arrangements for all of our staff. Still considering alternative increased enhancement in terms of fitness suite, the provision, and work in terms of opportunities in terms of temporary pools is still being investigated. I know it says at 1.10 that given the information contained within that para, that's not being recommended as developments. Further information we've received recently, and we are still exploring that as a potential opportunity. Work to increase information flow to customers is ongoing, and there will be a real increased emphasis in terms of our casual and day-to-day customers. The emphasis thus far has been on clubs. So very much a work in progress, Chair, and I'm very much happy to continue to report progress to elected members in the future, but happy to take questions on the content of the report today.
I think one of the things that had come out was the clubs have been dealt with, but the sort of ordinary general public had still to have some information, I think, on other issues, but as you say, that's work in progress. Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Leader. I mean, I think it's more than just information. It's actually provision for the wider public. I mean, the report today, I mean, two things strike me about the report. First of all, there are actually no figures whatsoever about costings for any of these alternative arrangements. Now, presumably, if we've put a legal case against Keir Northern for compensation, then we've put a figure to that particular case as to the cost of providing alternative provision, and I would have thought that the costings would certainly have been in this report today, and it's slightly disappointing there's absolutely no costings at all for any of this provision. Some issues are completely dismissed out of hand, such as the use of the Lorban Hall on the basis of it's too expensive. However, there's actually not a figure contained within the report to tell us how much that would cost and how much the alternative provisions actually costing as well. So how are we as a committee supposed to compare opportunities and options if we don't actually have the detailed costing? So it's slightly disappointing we don't have that, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you say that the wider public are currently not being provided for. I mean, the reality is this talks about organised clubs, but the vast majority of people who use DG1 at the moment are not members of organised clubs. They're people who go along to watch a concert, or they go along with their family for a swim on a Saturday morning. Now, these people are not obviously covered at all by the information contained in the report. So I understand it's work in progress. Now, it seems to me there's an awful lot of progress to be made, and I think we need to have an awful lot more detail. There's a few specific points I'd like to raise just in terms of the arrangements. The first one is in relation to point 1.7 on page 36, which is obviously the provision we have for school swimming. Is it going to be the case that the alternative provision we put in place will mean the same number of pupils that currently have access to swimming pool at DG1 will have access through the curriculum to alternative provision? I mean, the same number of pupils, not people being brought forward for a year or classes being cancelled, but the same number of pupils, will they have access to swimming under the alternative provisions? In terms of 1.10, I mean, I was surprised, I have to say, in terms of the way in which the option of a temporary swimming pool was dismissed, and I understand from what Richard's saying it's been reconsidered. And I do think that seems to be a reasonable way forward. These things are provided elsewhere. They're providing a temporary basis for competitions, and it seems to me a perfectly logical thing, particularly when it comes to the wider public, to actually look more seriously at providing a temporary swimming pool. But I'm alarmed at the figure that refers to renting a suitable property being approximately £600,000. Where exactly are we looking for this alternative property? What alternative property is it we're talking about being rented for £600,000? When I come back to Lorban Hall, we've got properties that are, well, I wouldn't say owned by the council because I'll get myself into trouble over that, but available to the council that we can access and don't have to pay £600,000 in rent. So what exactly we're looking at in terms of paying £600,000 in rent? It does seem to me an option that's certainly worth pursuing in more detail. Because if you look at 2.3, what we're also proposing to do is actually pay other organisations, such as a Barony College, for access to facilities. So although we've got plenty of council-owned property in the town of Dumfries, we're actually paying other organisations to use their facilities and telling the public they're going to have to travel several miles in order to access them, and we've actually got things on our own doorstep. And I think we need to look a bit closer as to what we've actually got on our own doorstep. And can also look at 2.8 and in terms of the actual memberships we provide. Obviously, one of the fears that I've certainly got is in the longer term, people are going to drift away from using DG1. You know, we've obviously, a big issue is about keeping people on board during the time of the actual closure. But people are actually going to start looking at alternative facilities, and they'll get into the habit of using alternative facilities unless we do a wee bit more to try and keep people on board. And can we just get a guarantee that obviously all the memberships that people currently have that allow them to access DG1, they've all got a flexibility in them that can be cancelled immediately? We won't have anybody being penalised with a longer term membership being told they have to cancel things well in advance. Because I noticed some of the memberships are able to be cancelled at short term, but in terms of all the memberships, can they actually be all cancelled on a short term basis and people not effectively penalised financially if they actually do cancel memberships because they no longer have access to, for example, the gym they use at DG1? And what incentives are we going to provide? And this is something we've got to look at to actually make sure that those customers who are effectively losing their facility through no fault of their own will actually, be incentivised to come back to DG1 when it does eventually reopen. I think we have to look at how we actually do that and bring people on board. And have we built into the costs that we've put in the legal claim to Keir Northern the fact that we are likely to lose customers in the longer term, and it'll take a long time to build that customer base back up? Has that formed part of the actual legal claim against Keir Northern that even when the facility reopens, the chances are that the number of people going along are actually going to be a lot less. In terms of the staffing, I mean, there's obviously not a lot of detail here, but I appreciate that work will be ongoing with trade unions on the issue. But how many casual staff at the moment do we actually have, not in this day, but primarily during the summer, but how many casual staff do we have that are actually employed at DG1? Effectively, how many people will lose their job who are casual staff, i.e. what posts will not be filled as a result of this closure? It refers obviously to contracted permanent and fixed term employees, but it doesn't make any reference really to what will happen to the casual staff vacancies that we tend to have here. And I'd be interested to know how many are actually affected by this. And the other concern is obviously staff will have to be redeployed. Now that's going to have a big impact because it will add to people's travel time. If you're a member of staff currently working in DG1, you might live in Dumfries, you're suddenly being told you're now working in Castle Douglas, or, will we get into a position where we're actually having to tell staff they're now working in Stranraer, for example, and if any member of staff is working out with their normal place of work, will they be compensated for the cost of travel to their alternative place of work? Because obviously it could add a significant cost to staff that are not going to be the highest paid within this local authority. So I think there is an awful lot of, in my view, information we still need, particularly in relation to actually detailed costing. We're supposed to, as a committee, scrutinise this issue, and we've waited a long time for this report to come forward, and I still don't know exactly how much this is going to cost, and we should have those figures if we're actually making a legal claim to compensate us for them.
Mr. Greaveson, there are a few points there. If you'd like to take them one at a time, please.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'll maybe start with the latter one first in relation to staffing, if I may. In terms of the numbers of staff involved, we obviously have a pool of casual staff, if you like, a number of casual staff where we have no contractual obligation to use them, nor them to have any obligation, in terms of working for us. However, over the course of a year, that equates to approximately 17 full-time equivalents. So it's difficult to put a number on the number of actual bodies in that pool because it fluctuates from time to time. But over the course of the year, in terms of the average number of casual hours that we use, that would equate to around 17 full-time equivalents over the year. In terms of human resources and trade unions, detailed discussions are ongoing with them in relation to the detail regarding staff working at other premises, other facilities. Yes, there'll be a requirement for us to meet travel costs so that staff aren't out of pocket in terms of working at other facilities, and that's been confirmed by our human resource colleagues. I'm not sure, is there anything else on the staffing that I may have missed before I move on? Councillor Smith, through you, Chair.
Won't be told they'll have to basically move to Stranraer, for example, or travel to Stranraer if that doesn't meet with their current commitments.
No, the discussions with staff have been, and trade unions have been very positive, very constructive thus far, and obviously will not be making unnecessary and unreasonable demands on staff in terms of that regard. It looks as though the work we've done to date, the vacancies that we've identified, the casual hours that are available at other facilities, means that travel can be accommodated, and that will be reasonable. In terms of the customers drifting away and particularly the fitness suite packages, no, absolutely, we've been working with all of our customers in terms of ensuring that they are kept up to speed. I have to say they've been very understanding, very supportive, very sympathetic to the challenges that we've got. The issues in relation to fitness suite membership is that we are exploring other options. We're signposting customers to the Keswick and King George V. We're looking at where we might relocate some of our existing pieces of equipment at other locations to enhance and develop that service for the duration of the closure. And we're looking at when we reopen, how we might reopen with some new pieces of kit. We're in discussion with our current fitness suite provider in terms of relaunching and remarketing the facility, and that is a cost that's been included as part of the claim. When we're due to reopen, we'll need to remarket and relaunch the facility. In terms of 1.10, as I say, we are very much reconsidering this option. We had looked at suitable alternative town centre sites that are of appropriate size to house the facility. Those were initial indicative costs that we were coming back with from having to rent a property that would tick those boxes. However, as I've said, we are re-looking at this, having had some very recent information with regard to how that might be achieved in a more economic way, so to speak. In terms of 1.7, the school swimming, in the first academic year, 14-15, there will be the same number of pupils that we will be able to deliver curriculum swimming for. They will be fast-tracked. Their swimming provision will be brought forward. We're still working on the second year because that clearly will be a challenge for us where we won't have that provision. And obviously the consideration of 1.10 would significantly help in that regard. In terms of the costings and the legal case, the legal proceedings, I think at the covering report, we make reference to the indicative timetable covering work specifications and procurement and reporting that back to elected members. We're in ongoing discussion with our legal team right now and happy to have that discussion with them in relation to what figures we can share and report back.
Councillor Smith, follow up.
Yeah, just to come back on that, I mean, I cannot see how we will be able to provide the same level of support for pupils to access swimming unless we do have an alternative facility that doesn't involve telling people they have to travel to Carlisle or Annan or elsewhere. I think that we have to look at that more seriously. And the issue, I come back again to the issue of the Lorban Hall and the complete lack of figures. I mean, this council's absolutely in denial when it comes to the Lorban Hall. It's as if it doesn't exist. Look out the window. It's a rather large building. You can't miss it. What exactly is our policy in relation to that building? I appreciate it's not for Richard to answer that question today, but it's not going to go away. There is not a cost-free option when it comes to the future of the Lorban Hall. This was an opportunity that we could have taken, I think, to begin a process of trying to find an alternative future use that the community want for that hall, and we seem to have been missing that opportunity. But there is not a cost-free alternative to the Lorban Hall. It's not just going to disappear. It's going to be there, and it's the community want to see it reopened in the longer term. And we had an opportunity, I think, to begin that process forced on us by the closure of DG1, and we seem to be ignoring that particular opportunity and looking at alternatives which are actually going to cost this council money. So it's hugely disappointing that we haven't had a more detailed look at the Lorban Hall and actually trying to find an alternative use that the community actually want to see in the longer term. But I do think, I'll come back to the point again, we really need to see more detailed figures, I think, in the future. And I hope this is going to become a regular report to this committee in the run-up to the closure of DG1, because I still think there's an awful lot of unanswered questions, particularly when it comes to the majority of customers who are not clubs, who maybe go to a concert on a Saturday evening, that we're going to lose all that, and there is no alternative provision being made within this report about DG1 for those customers that we could lose in the long term because they'll simply make alternative arrangements.
Well, my understanding, we are looking at all provision. As Richard said, it's a work ongoing, and if there's opportunities, they will be brought back. Councillor Maitland.
I appreciate the question being asked about figures here. I don't think there are sufficient, and I think we should look at that in the recommendations. In the meantime, I've got my health and social care and wellbeing agenda hat on, and I'm looking at paragraph 1.9, which is about maximising the use of Georgetown as a community facility. And when I was on the Education Committee and we dealt with this particular facility, which is actually a first-class facility, although I know it's had problems, I would like to say that we should be taking the opportunity at this point, while we are in a process of change, to maximise the community use of that pool, which I don't think has been done. So I think probably what I'd like is an assurance that actually will be an ongoing legacy from this particular process. So I'd like to ask whether that could be the case It is, of course, a very small facility, but I think it might well be possible to make more use of it.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just to confirm that discussion with education colleagues, very constructive, very positive. I'm very hopeful that absolutely we'll make use of that, I guess what can be described as a spa facility as opposed to a swimming facility, but I'm sure there are some customers that would benefit from that, and yes, very positive, and I'm sure that that will come to a positive fruition. I'm happy to report that back in a future report.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd probably like is a guarantee, and I think it suggests that within the report, but just to get that guarantee is that obviously there's got to be displacement to other parts of the region and out with the region, you know, and particularly when I look at the swimming provision. It's really just, it kind of states that, you know, when we use other swimming pools like Annan, etc., it'll be about putting on additional sessions. It won't be kind of cancelling any sessions or, you know, maybe kind of disrupting the current activities. It's about actually accommodating the extra demand through extra sessions being put on so that people in these locales don't have, you know, cancellation or a reduction in the provision that's being provided there. And the second thing as well, I know it's early days, but certainly some of the, particularly on the dry side as well, some of the searches for alternative accommodations will be quite complex to suit the user group's demands. One that springs to mind is, you know, the specialist equipment for the Y gymnastics. So it's just getting that guarantee that, you know, it has to be alternative, suitable proposals, you know, and they can be quite detailed.
Through you, Leader, yeah. I mean, I think in terms of the access to other facilities, the principle that we've been using is very much about adding value and enhancement and maximising downtime that there might be at other facilities across the region. And in terms of suitable alternatives, absolutely, it would seem a pointless exercise to put elements of our gymnastic programme into certain facilities that simply don't have the kit to be able to provide the type of service that they need. So that's absolutely a consideration. I'm happy to confirm that, Leader.
Councillor McCoughtry, did I notice your hand up?
Yep. Just going on to 2-4, Chairman, regarding the gymnastics club. I think that this discussion is ongoing with education colleagues. I think the education colleagues should be told to get on with it. At the end of the day, when that gym was built some 20 years ago, it was built specifically with gymnastics in mind. A substantial sum of money was invested there in order to take specialised gymnastics equipment. And it always seems to have moved to DG1 when that opened. And I take it on board that there's probably education people there who were not here at the time, but that's where the gymnastics club was originally based. The investment was made by this council's predecessor in that facility, and I think education should be told, get on with it, that the investment is there, it's only a case of moving the equipment in. I think, arising out of comments made, particularly by Councillor Smith, that this requires to have a report at every meeting of this committee. I think members need to be kept up to speed on this. And I think we need costings as well. Members should have knowledge of the costings of this. So I'd like to see reporting this situation up at every meeting, Chairman.
I'm sure you'll take that back, that education should just get on and get this sorted. Councillor McComb.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. First of all, 3.3 on page 33. It states here that suitable alternative arrangements have been identified to accommodate the majority of sports clubs and programmed sessions. How many sports clubs and sessions have not been accommodated to date?
Mr. Graveson.
Thank you, Lady. In terms of the specific work with clubs, the only club that we're currently continuing to have dialogue with is the netball club. We have, that hasn't confirmed and agreed what we're offering as a suitable alternative. That discussion continues. We've offered a couple of options. They're currently considering them, but Every other club we feel has been, we've had discussion with, and the alternative that's been presented has been deemed as appropriate.
The second query with regard to the netball club, 2.7 on page 37. Is it acceptable that some current long-term school lets may be displaced to accommodate the netball club?
Leader, that's probably a question that my education colleagues require to answer. Certainly that's something that they're looking at right now, and we're working with them to see where that those long-term lets could be accommodated at other facilities if the facilities that they have are more appropriate to the specific needs of our user groups. So we're needing some flexibility on both parts, but that discussion's ongoing.
With that, at the recommendations, we were asked to consider the proposed alternative arrangements. I think we've done that. And we've had a request that this is brought back regular reports to this committee. Councillor Dykes.
Sorry, with the financial figures on the papers would be very handy.
Members happy with that? Right. Thank you for that. Move on to item 6, development of the Theatre Royal Dumfries. Mr. Crichton, can you just clarify that point?
Yeah, my understanding was that members sought advice, and the advice given was staying on this item, having declared the interest.
Right, if we move on to the report, item 6, Mr. Grieveson with the report in front of us.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of points. Firstly, and my apologies, I draw members' attention to a typo at 3.2 at the second bullet point. The request from this Area Committee for the refunded funds was 30k, not 300k. My apologies for that, members. Just very briefly, this is, I think, a really good piece of work that's been taken forward by the Joint Theatre Project Board and ECOS. The recommendations, I think, support the current developments in relation to the cultural capital development and offerings of, within Dumfries, and indeed the wider work of the Chamber of Arts, and the two very much go hand in hand. So I'm happy to take questions that members may have, Leader.
Questions? Councillor Smith.
Thanks very much, Leader. I mean, this is obviously an incredibly long overdue report, but a very welcome one, I have to say. And I'm more than happy to support the recommendations. And, you know, we need to get on with this and actually start to back the Theatre Royal in the same way that other groups, such as Hollywood Trust and others, have actually backed with financially. We need to do exactly the same. I think if you look back in the history of the theatre in Dumfries in terms of this council's support, you know, we haven't exactly covered ourselves in glory. I think it was back in 2004 this council first committed to giving £2.4 million to the redevelopment of the Theatre Royal, plus I think £600,000 over a period of a number of years for revenue costs. And in 2006 that grant and that commitment was withdrawn, and we put in place a commitment of £488,000. So that was 7 years ago. And what have we been doing for the last 7 years? Well, not a great deal. It took us almost a year and a half to even set up the board that was agreed in 2009, and it's not met in very many occasions, you know. So we waited a long time to get to this stage now where we can actually show some sort of commitment towards the Theatre Royal. I think that the proposals, and people that have looked at them in any detail will see they're actually really exciting. This is an excellent project. I think the Guild of Players and everybody else involved have pulled together a fantastic plans for the future of Theatre Royal, and we should be getting behind it. This is not only going to really improve facilities within Dumfries Town Centre, it's actually going to help significantly when it comes to not only safeguarding the future of what is Scotland's oldest theatre, but actually helping regenerate the town as well. So it's a good news story, and I hope that everybody will get behind it and actually show their commitment and back the Theatre Royal, and we can get on with providing a really fit-for-purpose, exciting project in our town centre, which is supposed to be a regional capital. So I'm happy to fully support and move the recommendations.
Well, I'd be happy to second that because of the fact that I think the new project that's come forward is more sustainable than the original one. I think the original one was a bigger, more expensive model. This one that we've worked on now has actually been a lot of hard work by the people involved in the theatre, and they've brought forward something that's actually going to be more sustainable in the future, and I would be happy to support the recommendations as agreed. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much. Well, that sounds to me like a real vote of confidence in the work that's been put in so far. So I think I will add my plaudits to the way that this has been taken forward. I think we have a good plan, and I think we have a way forward with respect to the business plan, which is going to be worked on with officers. I think clear messages were sent and external money has been levered in. So I'm extremely happy with this proposal.
Councillor McCaughey.
Yep, I'm happy to support this, Chair. I'll just point out, Chair, before certain political groups start congratulating themselves, this theatre could have been up and running 4 or 5 years ago if the £2.4 million that had been committed by the go-ahead councillors at that time had been invested. But certain political groups, you know, want to associate themselves with the thing, should remember it was them that cut the money from the Theatre Royal in the first place. So don't get too enthusiastic about something you cut a number of years ago.
Thanks for that comment, but as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men gone after glee, and I suppose back in 2007 maybe some of us had the foresight that we were going into a recession and decided it wasn't a sustainable model. There's a new one came forward and this is it.
Well, you certainly haven't got us out of recession, have you?
With that, we have the recommendations moved by Councillor Smith, second by myself. Are we anyone otherwise minded? As I said, the best laid plans of mice and men. That's about as much culture as I know. Right. We'll move on to item 7, Dumfries and Galloway Code of Corporate Governance. Mr. Haswell.
Chairman, just a quick note. This is an ongoing piece of work, developing the governance assurance statement for the council. It requires to be included in the final accounts. You'll see that there's a remit to the Audit and Risk Management Committee to look at the annual governance statement. Can I just remind members that I have an outstanding plea to get member feedback through groups on this, because I can write all the assurance statements that I like, and if you don't agree with them, good governance is the responsibility of members as well as officers. So if I could make the plea, if members are prepared to note this report and make the plea that we meet with groups to get their take on the 6 principles and the underpinning 18 issues. I've nothing to add other than that, Leader.
Well, I know our group are happy to take that on. We had arranged a date, but unfortunately, because of overrun, we couldn't make it. Councillor Smith.
I think it will be important to get feedback on it, because there's obviously a few things in the appendix that I don't recognise at all. The decision tracking system, which provides the basis for assuring members over a robust process in place to implement decisions and detail the actions taken. Well, that doesn't happen. There's a wee box in the agenda that says action, and it's currently blank in just about every single council report. So, I certainly wouldn't be happy with the statements in Principle 3 that we've achieved all these things, to be perfectly honest. So I still, I would certainly question quite a lot that's in the appendix, and I think that we do need to speak to members to see whether or not this actually does meet what I would regard as a practical code of corporate governance, because I don't recognise some of the stuff in this report.
Now, I was right. Councillor Maitland's group has met and taken this forward. We'll make ourselves available, and I'm sure Ronnie and his team will make themselves available. So with that, we're asked to reaffirm the Council's continued work on the Code of Corporate Governance, including work with political groups. So we are reaffirming that we will take that on board, and to note that an annual governance statement will be included as an agenda item for audit and risk on the 18th of June, and will subsequently form part of the unaudited financial accounts presented to full council on the 27th of June. Happy with that? Right. Thanks for that, members. We'll now move on to item 8, revenue services write-offs. item 8. Mr Tracy, have you anything to add to the report?
Thanks, Chair. Very briefly, this is the normal annual write-off report that this committee receives. Effectively, the decision that we're asking members to consider today is in relation to Appendix 3, 3A and 3B, and to approve the write-offs for 19 rates and 7 sundry debtors listed in Appendix 3. The other appendices are very much for noting and give information on write-offs that were carried out under delegated authority. Paragraph 3.4 sets out the permitted classifications for write-off, and I would stress to members that at any time when a debt is written off, it is possible to bring it back in again if there are reasons for and the potential to pursue the debt. And that does happen on a regular basis. I was hoping a colleague of mine, Helen Drinkwater, would be here to answer any questions, but she may well walk in as we're dealing with this report. I think we probably got to this item a bit quicker than we expected, so my apologies, Chair.
I could show my age and say maybe she's helping James Herriot carve a cow. That's the lady who was his wife. Questions on this report? Councillor Crothers.
Thanks, Leader. Just it's a query in regards to page 61. You have a table and on the last, it's under number 6, which is Morrison Construction, Grange House, Westmeans Road, Grange House. Sorry, that's the address, but I think that I'd like all the detail on that, please. There's a note there, but as far as I'm aware, that was work undertaken on a public road between Lockerbie and Langham, and just what the background information on that is. If you've not got the generalities or the information here, I'd like it definitely after the committee in some format, but I think there's a very general statement there. I'd like to see the detail behind it, please.
Do we have that detail with us today?
No, we don't, Leader. We'd need to provide that information following the meeting. We've just provided the summary information that's been supplied by the department, the relevant department.
So if you can make sure that gets to Councillor Crothers. Right. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on the analysis of write-offs at Appendix 6A, and it refers on all of them to no realistic prospects of recovery. And in the notes on page 52, it does give us an overview of that, particularly in relation to things like council tax, where it's been through the sheriff offices and enforcement and collection has been attempted. At what point do we decide that there's no realistic prospect of recovery, and what exactly does that mean? Because to me, if it's gone through court and these people, are expected to pay back, even if it's a minimal amount, we're writing off quite a significant amount of money that seems doesn't seem to add up for me. So it's just when do we decide there's no realistic prospect of recovery, and what sort of circumstance would create that to happen?
Chair, what normally happens is we take a summary warrant. Once we've taken that, it's passed to third-party agents, sheriff officers for collection. They obviously have certain powers. They do their utmost to collect that. At a given point when obviously they just cannot collect, they will come back and recommend that we write it off. So it's when they tell us to do so. There's nothing else that they can do. They tell us to do so. That's when we write it off.
So on that basis, that the sheriff officers are deciding that there's no point in you pursuing any further, even at £2 a week or a very minimal amount.
I mean, I think in these cases, it's okay saying £2 a week, and in most of these instances, they're getting absolutely nothing at all from the debtors.
Councillor McClung.
Thanks, Leader. It's page 65, Appendix 5, sales ledger light-offs by service. We're writing off over 8,000 from the police and only 275 for the fire, but can you explain why we're writing off a debt for the police?
Chair, again, we don't have the detail of that particular debt, but we can certainly provide that. I don't know if Mr. Haswell can add anything to that.
Chairman, I don't know the exact detail of the £8,000 that's been written off. I suspect it relates to police providing cover at, for example, a football match where they have not been able to recoup the monies. We were responsible for the police up until the 31st of March this year. Therefore, we ran their accounts, and that debt lies in the police's books. It's appropriate that we write it off at this moment. I can give Councillor McClung the exact detail of where the debt arose at the conclusion of the meeting, if that's okay. I don't have that detail, but I know that it will be about that. The police will have supplied, for example, they charge so much for a constable, so much for a sergeant, so much for an inspector, etc. In fact, this council approved these costs up until very recently. So that's where the debt will have arisen.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to get details after the meeting.
Councillor Dick.
Thanks, Chair. Two questions there. Am I right in saying that in the event of a bankruptcy there is still the possibility of recovery of maybe perhaps a penny in the pound? And the second thing is, although it's welcome, I'm just wondering why there's a substantial drop in the sales ledger, sales register write-offs on page 65.
Your first question, you're quite right. Although a company is made bankrupt, what we actually do is we actually put in a claim. We're a creditor, so we put in a claim. I think it's fair to say we don't actually get a lot of money back. It's only in a very few cases. And can I just ask what your second question was again, Councillor Dick? Sorry.
Just why there was such a substantial drop in the sales ledger write-offs on page 65. It goes from 475,000 odds down to 157 in the ensuing year. Oh, wait a minute. I assume that's because we're only partway into the year.
Well, no, the actual years are wrong. It's actually 11-12 and 12-13. For 11-12, that was the end of our financial system. We operated on PowerSolve. The council bought a new financial management system, so we did a big clear out in 11-12, so that's the substantial drop.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks. It's on page 61. I'm reading off the additional paper sent, but two things. None of the years are in there except there's a couple of references in the reasons, but some of them haven't got dates. The one that intrigued me was the Vaucluse Centre, and not so much the sum of money, but how we arrived at that. The outstanding amount relating to additional works undertaken by DG Design beyond those originally anticipated by the Vaucluse Hall Committee. Now, there must be lessons there for this council to learn that we didn't get into putting bells and whistles on something that nobody wants and they can't afford. That's the way I read that. And I know this gets some funding from the council, so there might have been a repayment plan there. However, it wasn't their fault. It's a very sort of open statement. It doesn't tell me exactly. But the thing I'm asking is, there must be lessons there for us to learn that we didn't get into this situation again when we're contracting our own people to do work.
The member's absolutely right, sir. There was an expectation that work would be done. There was more work done than was originally asked for. Maybe I could speak with Councillor Ogilvie offline without going into the detail on it, but certainly the decision was taken that it wasn't worth pursuing that particular debt. Prospects of recovery in court were limited, to say the least. But I'm happy to speak to Councillor Ogilvie off the line on it.
With that, we have the recommendations to Councillor McCaughtry.
Thanks, Chairman. I think we've got to get this into context, because I think folk are maybe getting a wee bit too worried. If you look at the write-off of council tax last year, it's £30,000, which in the grand scheme of things is about 0.05% of the total monies due. So it's not a major problem. I think you've got to remember that some of these are technical write-offs rather than anything else, because if somebody dies and it's then a week before the council's informed, that debt is still lying there, even though there's no chance of recovery. So I think maybe we need a seminar again on exactly what these debts exactly are, how many of them could be recoverable, etc., etc. I'm more concerned about the rates write-off for 2013, because some of the companies there hadn't paid rates for 3 or 4 years. Now, we don't seem to be enforcing it as well as we used to do in the past. Certainly many years ago, after 1 year of non-payment of rates, we would send in the bailiffs to go and seize goods. And I can remember one case in the Lower Burn Centre where marched into a shop and seized the entire stock. That was auctioned off and we got our money back for the rates. But there's companies there on the Appendix 3A who have gone for 3 or 4 years without any rate payment. Now, our guys should have been in there with the tacky boots on and getting that money, seizing goods, auctioning them, getting the money. And some of these are fairly major companies. And I think we've got to be a bit more diligent in pursuing some of these companies at getting the money.
I think Councillor Cox is quite right. Maybe members do need a seminar. The law has changed considerably. You can't go in with the tackety boots on the way you used to be able to do. The issue's a very valid one, however. I would assure members that both Paul Garrett and I ensure that all debts owed to this council are pursued as arduously as possible. I will, however, arrange a seminar for members and maybe arrange for the external auditor to speak to members about recovery of debt, particularly by local authorities across Scotland and where we compare with other local authorities. If that's agreeable by members, Chairman.
Councillor Nicholson.
It's just a quickie on the Dumfries and Galloway Arts Association. Were any directors of that liable for any of the money?
No, so we checked that. The directors had no personal liability for that. I think we did endeavour to pursue that, as Councillor Nicholson may recall.
Now, we could have sequestered Mrs Maitland's expenses, but there we go.
I didn't need names.
Yeah. Just as well the mic wasn't on for the recording. Right, if we move to recommendations, to approve the, well, not happy, are we content that we've taken action and we're willing to approve the write-offs as detailed? Note the further accounts for the council, noting that, and noting the sequestrations, etc. And agree a seminar for the process, etc., of write-off. Councillor Crothers?
It was pointed out to us on page 65 there was a typo. Did you pick up on that as well?
And Councillor Geddes?
In relation to the seminar, sir, it would be, I think we should be focusing on, from the benchmarking perspective of this. I think, I don't want to sound smug or complacent in the slightest. I think in comparative terms, we will have an extremely good record. And I would want to see that. I know Mr. Haswell well enough to know exactly why he suggested it. So, as I say, I think it's imperative. We don't have a culture of celebrating success in this authority. Let's have the seminar. Let's benchmark. Let's see where we are in the league table. And nonetheless, if we can improve, let's look at ways of doing so.
With that, Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, and I think it is imperative that there is a seminar, given that we are looking at something that is retrospective, it's historical, and asking for write-off in terms of how the debt has been pursued. But we are facing difficult times. There are people out there, and indeed we may find that the council tax, and while we have nothing to do with rent not having any stock, we are going to face difficult times, or at least the people out there will face difficult times in terms of the welfare reform, the universal credit and so forth and so on. So again, while the remarks are being made that we have a good record, and I think we could be facing serious times, and I would hope that the council will be sympathetic to some of the difficulties that the people out there will be facing. So I think it's right and proper we do have a seminar so that we can get a grip or a grasp of what could be in front of us.
Right, with that, we'll move on to item 9, which is homelessness review. Mr. Monteforte with us today. Have the report in front of us. Is there anything you wish to add at this stage? Happy to answer questions.
Happy to answer questions on behalf of my colleagues who authored the report. I would simply as well wish to offer apologies on behalf of Mr. Dean, who unfortunately couldn't be here today for circumstances beyond his control. Happy to answer questions.
Councillor Geddes.
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. It's not so much questions as more comment. I would have to be candid and say that as far as I'm concerned, so this report simply isn't fit for purpose. I would start off, first of all, I'm not trying to be flippant or facetious or trivialise what is an extremely serious subject, but if you look at your background paragraph in the report, this report basically has been outstanding since the 4th of July last year. And we have it today. And, you know, the old phrase, as I've already said, the gestation period of an elephant for the birth of a mouse comes to mind. And it's not a very robust mouse, I would have to say. As far as I'm concerned, sir, if you look at paragraph 4.1 of the report, for instance, you will see it talks about outcomes from such a review may indicate that the service needs to be redesigned or that it functions well in meeting its statutory requirements. The report doesn't, however, in my view, give any guidance or offer any views on which of these two alternatives are more likely scenarios. From perusal of the report, as far as I'm concerned, there is no mention made, or it's not apparent, that this particular service is already on the journey of an improvement plan. My understanding is that it was awarded a pretty mediocre grade several years ago. I think, if memory serves me correctly, it might have been a C grade. Now, again, in the back of that, sir, there's no mention made in the report of what pressures the service is currently facing, what aspects of the service are performing well, is the service staying within its budget, or is it running a deficit? And if so, how big the deficit is. And if you look at paragraph 4.4 of the report, Leader, to me it's quite clear what the implications are. It is running a deficit. Again, no information in the report. Again, moving on, sir, you know, there's no mention made in the report of the targets or performance indicators being met. My understanding in relation to that, one of the most important ones, for instance, is that, you know, we have a specific period of approximately 28 days for rehousing homeless families from temporary accommodation. Now, my understanding, sir, is I know of certain cases which are coming up for a year, and I have no doubt, you know, other members in this chamber today will be aware of people in their wards where a similar situation applies. My understanding, in fact, is it's significantly in excess of 6 months, which is the going period, as it were, for the you know, for people living in that accommodation, you know, to be there. And again, that's information which, to me, the report is lamentably deficient in. Again, when you move, as it were, sir, to paragraph 4.5 of the report, it states that complaints against the service are relatively few. Well, to me, that does smack of complacency, Leader. And I would ask there, you know, have the recipients or have people who have been through this particular service, have they ever been asked for their views on it? Has there ever been any attempt, as it were, to drill down in relation to this, you know, what takes place in this authority, and more importantly, on the subject of benchmarking, how we compare with other authorities? There's none of that mentioned in the report, sir. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, the real pièce de résistance is the statement which states that, you know, at the end of the day, yeah, if we carry out this review, it would take 3 to 6 months to complete, and it would cost in excess of £50,000. Where's the evidence for that, Leader? There is no evidence. There are various other points here in the report which are equally deficient in evidence. And as far as I'm concerned, sir, it's simply no good enough. And I would therefore ask, in fact, that we remit for a further report to the next meeting of this authority, bringing forth all of this information, as it were, to allow us to come to a meaningful decision. And in the meantime, I would ask, in fact, that part of the review, because I hope we do go down the road of a review, I think it's absolutely essential that we do go down the road of a full and radical review of this service. And I would like to see part of that review, including, you know, whether or not this particular service should lie where it currently lies in this department. Some of us argued right from the start, sir, at the end, right from the very start, that this, in fact, this service should be located in strategic housing where, in fact, it should have been. It hasn't, and as far as I'm concerned, my original concerns have only been proven to be confirmed by the passage of time. So therefore, I would move, without trying to usurp debate or cut other people off from the debate, I would move, in fact, that when we come to, that is part of the recommendation that we do agree that there is a review of homeless service to be undertaken, but that review would be in the back of the information that I've already alluded to, and it would also include the future relocation or the possible future relocation of this service into strategic housing. I'll leave it at that for the moment. I'm grateful for your indulgence.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, and Alistair has covered it well in terms of it's not so much what the report says, it's what it does not say, and the information that we require as elected members. I think he made the point in terms of the background under 3. This report was asked for by the Area Committee on the 4th of July 2012 as an overarching, and that was at a time when the supported places in Stranraer were being reduced from 52 to 14 because it was averred that the majority of the homeless people, applicants, came from the Dumfries end that were accommodated in Stranraer, and that was to be more equitable across the region, as it states in item 3 under the background. Situation is that we at Stranraer is still receiving a large number of referrals from Dumfries and indeed anywhere else throughout the region. And this is at a time when it is difficult in Stranraer to find homeless accommodation. People are being offered all sorts of places out with Stranraer. So the equity that's equitable situation does not seem to have materialised. There's nothing in the report that would indicate that. Indeed, some of the places that people are being put out with the 14 recognised places, then it would be questionable whether indeed the outreach support is being provided to them. And these are people who are very vulnerable and do require that support. Yet there's nothing in the report that indicates what the situation is with regards to the reduction from 52 to 14 and how the service is coping. It goes on to talk in terms of resources. I've asked the question of the social work department, and I wrote to Mr. Haswell, Alec Haswell, in terms of the provision that we do provide in Stranraer by way of furnished accommodation. Nothing in here about furnished accommodation and whether we are meeting our contractual obligation in terms of the maintenance of those properties, and whether indeed, or at least when they were last maintained, painted and so forth, whether, quite frankly, some are falling into a ghetto. And that's putting it mildly in terms of the accommodation, the refurbishment and so forth. Nothing in the report of that situation. Again, people present themselves as homeless in Stranraer, no accommodation available for them. Nothing in here about that at all. So the whole thing is questionable as whether it is fit for purpose, as Councillor Gerritsey put it more eloquently, the gesticulations of an elephant to give birth to a mouse. You know, this is not fit for purpose in terms of what we should be providing, what resources are being made available, how we are providing for the homeless, the length of period that people stay in homeless. I think Alistair referred to it as a year. There are people staying longer and will stay longer under the welfare reform, the cuts in housing benefits, the bedroom tax, and yet nothing in here that indicates what we should be doing by way of a review. I think this report should go back. It should come back as a full review of the service, but we need to have it at an early stage. I think Alistair was referring to the next policy and resources. We need much more information and precise information as to what the effects are on the changes that took place, because I don't think that it'll look good in terms of how we've tried to accommodate for homeless people, homeless applicants, homeless accommodation, and how we are delivering the service. So, you know, I have serious questions about this whole report. Leader.
I have someone, well, two people who have said that they feel that the report doesn't have sufficient information. I would be minded to actually, if that's the case, ask for this to come back to the next committee with a fuller report. Is there anyone otherwise minded? Councillor Maitland?
I might be. Look, can I say that this should have been in front of us far earlier? Members are obviously cross. I'm not surprised they're cross. I would be too. It should have been here much earlier. But and the other thing I'm astonished about is that CMT appear to be happy with this report. We look at governance assurance in item number 6. They appear to be happy with this, which I find quite extraordinary. I don't know why we're picking this particular issue out of our performance management structure. We've got a framework that we work to, where reports come up and reviews are dealt with through a system that we've got already agreed. I am not entirely clear how the area committee deals with an issue like this, unless it says that there is something in terms of our performance that we are not performing to. And this report, you know, either people are saying this is not right, we're being told that areas of performance meet or exceed targets. Now, that's either right or wrong. And I have to accept, because you do have to accept a professional statement that that is either right or wrong. So, in actual fact, I think that the issues here are absolutely correct in the sense that there is anxiety about what will happen through the welfare reform matters, but that's a separate issue, and that can be dealt with and looked at through the committee that we've set up to deal with that, which then has to report back. So I actually might well annoy members, but I don't think this is right at all. I think what's come up here is completely wrong, this committee report.
I must admit, when reading through it, the recommendation that came from Wigton, the full report doesn't actually refer to what the issue was. And that's why I was of the opinion that the report was slightly light. And therefore, well, why are we doing it? And I think that's why we need further information. Councillor Smith, you also indicate you might...
Yeah, I mean, I just echo entirely what you're saying. I mean, as somebody who's not a member of the Wigton Area Committee, when I read this report, I had absolutely no idea whatsoever why Wigton Area Committee were asking for a review. I mean, I've heard more from the first two speakers today to tell me why they were asking for a review. Some obviously concerning issues raised there. There's no mention of it at all in the report. You know, there's a two-page report that says why this is a bad idea, but no information at all on why the clearly legitimate request came in. And Councillor Maitland touches on the performance framework. Well, is a performance framework working when an area committee raises a concern in July 2012 and we get a report come May 2013 to say there's a problem here according to an area committee? So maybe the performance framework where area committee is supposed to flag issues up and they get dealt with, frankly, isn't working. But I mean, the report to me, it doesn't tell me anything at all. I've heard more in the first two speakers about the issue than I ever got from reading this report, and I do think we need to at least see the reasons why the requests came for a review before we make any sort of balanced decision on it. I mean, the reality is we're going to have to review an awful lot of services across the council over the next year or so, purely on the basis of the budget setting process of this particular council. And every time we ask for a review of a service, we get told it's going to cost £50,000, then frankly, that's a bit of a worry, because we're going to have to use existing staff and existing resources to look at every single aspect of this council's work in the months and years ahead if we're going to balance the budget. And as soon as we get a request for a single review, we're told, you're not having it, it costs too much. I mean, I don't think that's acceptable.
I have two first-time speakers who have indicated to speak, which is Councillor Dick, then Councillor Crothers, and then Councillor Geddes back.
Yeah, I think this is an absolutely shocking report, and I would expect the author of any subsequent report should ensure he or she is here to speak to it. A report which says things like tends to perform well and generally meeting or exceeding targets, frankly, it makes me feel like I've been brought the tree in a fish barrel. I think that's a disgraceful
expression in a paragraph. I can't remember when last I saw a report of this nature at Social Services Committee or the Community Health and Social Care Partnership Board, although I know at the last meeting of the Partnership Board we have asked for an officer of housing to attend. I'm more than happy for it to come back again with much more detail, but could also just ask whether in fact we actually need to spend 50,000 on an all-encompassing review. Could we not do it within existing resources, but perhaps over a longer time?
So to that, Councillor Crothers.
It was pretty much on the same point that Councillor Dix made in his last point there, and it was whether we actually go to undertake an overarching and all-encompassing review. And if that's the case, there's a financial implication, because I would look, if we can get it back to the next meeting, great. But I'd rather get it right first time, see the proper review, what we're looking for.
Well, I'll take Councillor McGregor as first time speaker and let you then Councillor
Just very briefly picking up on Councillor Dick's comments, I don't actually understand why it's a policy and resources. If there's a homelessness review required, why is this not going through the Housing Subcommittee or Social Work Services? I would expect an education-related request from an area committee to go to the parent committee. So I'm slightly confused as to why it's even in the policy and resources set papers, and just clarification on that, and I think it should be remitted to the correct committee.
And Councillor McCaughtrey.
I think this actually echoes something that was raised at the ad hoc committee on schemes of delegation last week, that area committees are just being totally ignored at the present time. It's absolutely ridiculous that an area committee quite rightly asks for a report to come forward, and it takes nearly a year to do so. And I think it's just the total contempt with which area committees have been treated in the recent past. And either we're going to disband area committees or actually respect them. But this is just another example of area committees just being trodden on.
Councillor Geddes, then Councillor Scobie.
I'm very grateful to you, Leader, for allowing me the opportunity to come back in. I would remind colleagues and yourself so that, the area committee went through the process it's laid down. Precisely the process it's laid down. And that's why this is coming back to Policy and Resources Committee. The blunt fact of the matter is that, it is an unconscionable and an unacceptable, in my opinion, length of time which has been taken to discharge the remit. But, Leader, I would have lived with that if what we'd got at the end of the day was something which was meaningful and serious and was adducing the information of the type that I've already indicated and outlined. Instead, we've got something which at best is complacent and, in my opinion, smug and unacceptably so. And it simply is not good enough. And I think we as elected members are entitled to expect a better standard of service than that. Can I also say as well in relation to Councillor Maitland's point, that this is not in the back, this was not raised, sir, on the back of welfare benefit reform concerns. Nothing to do with that. These will undoubtedly exacerbate the situation. There is no argument about that. But this issue was raised, as I've said, long before that. And again, without falling into the trap that I'm accusing other people of and coming to conclusions without proper information, what I'm saying is that I have always, and I'm not alone in this chamber today, I've always had reservations and concerns about the location of this particular service and this particular department. And I would like to see that addressed in the updated report that comes before us, because I personally feel that we should be looking sufficiently radically at repositioning this service into strategic housing. And I have no problems in saying that, but I'm not suggesting we agree that today. We need further information and justification for that. That's the point. And I hear what Councillor Crothers is saying, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's unreasonable, standing the length of time we've had to wait for this, to ask for this to come back to the next meeting of the committee. And with due deference to Alan Montefort, and I would hope he knows me well enough to realise that I'm not taking a snide pop at him. I agree entirely with Ian Dick. I think at the end of the day that the Senior Social Work Service Manager should be instructed to come to the next meeting of this committee and to present the report.
Leader, if I could, just in terms of the point raised by Councillors Dick and Geddes in respect of my colleague, it was impossible for him to attend today. He was summoned as a witness to a High Court case in Glasgow. He had a choice of either attending court or being in contempt of court. So there was no choice in the matter. Could also make just a couple of points, if I could, in terms of the performance reporting. The homelessness key performance indicators, it was agreed, as I understand it, that would be reported annually, and the next report is due to come before Social Work Committee next month. And in respect of the particular pressure and resources, welfare reform and the considerations around that clearly indicate that we will likely face additional pressure on homelessness services, which is why it's suggested within the report that there may be some additional demand on resource in order to undertake a review of the service, given that the service will be facing additional demands beyond that which they're facing just now.
Right. So we'll let Councillor Scobie speak. Councillor Geddes.
With your leave, Leader, I was not suggesting, in fact, that Mr Dean should, in fact, put himself in a situation where he's accused of contempt of court or whatever, by coming here instead of going to the High Court as a witness. The point I'm making, and I make no apologies for putting the marker down, I would expect in a report of this nature that the author of the report appears before this committee to present it. Because this is not the first time, and I'm thinking back to days of Housing Subcommittee, in fact, where we've had reports at the end of the day where the author of the report has not turned up and sent other people, as it were, to present the report on his or her behalf. That's a sideshow, that's a side issue. I'm merely putting the marker down. I don't think it's an unreasonable request, and I make no apologies for having said what I said.
Right. I think we're sort of all of an agreement with what we're actually wanting to do, which is to prepare. So if I could ask anyone who wishes to make a comment, that's Councillor Scobie and Councillor Dykes, if they could be brief, because I think we're all heading in the same direction.
Yeah, Chair, I will be brief, and I think Councillor Smith, Colin, picked it up, and what I did. This followed a performance report that was made to the area committee, and the area committee were seriously concerned with the 52 places reduced to 14. And as has been said, nothing in the report that indicates this about the overarching provision of homelessness. Could I refer you again to item 7 of the agenda that we discussed earlier? And I, under standing orders, put in a request for, in response to Councillor McGregor, put in a request for a report to go to Social Work Committee on the maintenance of homeless accommodation. I have written to Alec as the monitoring officer because under protocol, I am still waiting on confirmation of the report, and it's for me to determine, whether the report should go when I followed standing orders. So in governance terms, in protocol terms, it has not been adhered to. So I have written in monitoring, in terms of the monitoring officer's role, to whether he thinks it's acceptable. I don't think it's acceptable the way that this has been dealt with, and it deals with the issue that this should have gone to social work in terms of the maintenance of the properties, but this was one that was said it was the company policy and resources following the area committee. That's where it was suggested then. Nothing to do with welfare reform at the time.
Councillor Dykes.
Chair, as we're moving towards getting a consensus to bring back a fuller report, I might wait until that comes back before I ask any of the questions that I would like to ask. I do think when we do get the fuller report, it would be good to have some financial information on that as well, because obviously homelessness is an issue across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, and if we are going to be looking at a review, then we need to have really costed figures as to why it's going to cost £50,000.
Mr Haswell, we want to clarify the way forward.
Thank you, Chairman. My comment immediately is when you've taken that many pelters, you surrender. This is not fit for purpose. I accept it's not fit for purpose. I apologise, it should never have come before members, and I'm doing that as the Council's governance officer. Nothing to do with social work. I'm doing it as the Council's governance officer. We will bring back a report to the next meeting, detailing and answering the questions which Councillor Geddes raised initially. I think that members will then be asked to determine whether they want a service review to be taken forward. Can I remind you that a part of the budget process there will be a an opportunity for members to request service reviews, and clearly that's what you're going to request. So I take that on board. Can I say to Councillor Scobie, I will speak with him about the application standing orders offline. However, I should perhaps have pulled this report before it ever got to members. That was my decision, and I will take the responsibility for that. Again, I apologise, and you will get a full report to your next meeting.
Chair, just with reference to, speak offline, I'm not, while I will speak offline if that's Alex's request, all I want is the assurance that standing orders will be adhered to in terms of, requests and so forth, and that members, and if I get that assurance, I'd be quite happy.
Quite happy to give
from the monitoring officer's point of view.
I'm quite happy to give Councillor Scobie the assurance that standing orders will be applied. They're currently being applied in relation to that issue. I was not aware that you hadn't received an officer's response, but I'll check that.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with, there needs to be a further report. I agree that there's further information. I do think, and it was mentioned earlier on in this committee about the agenda, about decisions from committees and how they are taken forward in a timely manner and with the full information, it should be back. So that once that is fully functioning, I would hope that this will never happen again, because it is definitely unacceptable. I think in this, we can't target people, and I think Alex saying about the governance and he takes responsibility. I think, a lot has been mentioned about social work, and I think they've been going through in a turbulent time, if I can just put it that way, over the past year or so, or even longer, and I think that's got to be understood as well, and the pressures on individuals, and we need to take care of the individuals within that organisation as well and give them the support. And if this council is failing in doing that, to let them do their work, then we need to do something about that. I think on the actual homeless and the quality, I think there has to be strategic, it has to be an equal treatment right across Dumfries and Galloway. And I was pleased, I visited one of the new homeless places up Blockside in Lewis Avenue, the flats, and I was absolutely, I think it's a fantastic facility that DGHP has now got in place for individuals within that homeless accommodation. They've got security, they've got help, they've got people in there that help them, they've got a communal room, they've actually got places where, they actually get taught to cook meals and that different type of support. They actually bring people in. So that is a step forward in my mind, and I take it that's being replicated throughout Dumfries and Galloway and not just in Dumfries. So I would just like to say things aren't just all bad, but I understand the need for further information. And I think when all that's brought together, then we can make a proper decision in which we vote to go forward.
Right. I have had a request from the Chair of Social Work to speak on this. I wasn't indicated prior to the meeting. Usually it happens prior to the meeting. My view is that we have exhausted this. I think one of the things I would like to come when we come to the recommendations is the fact that along with social work part of homelessness, we take on board the PHE part of the homelessness service as well. I think both need to be addressed if we're looking at it holistically. There is also the fact that there was mentioned by Councillor McCaughey with regard to subcommittee. I think we should make a recommendation as a committee that is taken forward to the subcommittee, that we look at the homelessness provision and where best it lies in the committee remit. I don't know if that's possible to do that one. I'm not going to let you speak because I think it's always been in the past people have asked prior to the meeting, and that's the way I would like to carry on with that. Right. Well, I think we'll just carry on with business. We'll defer this one and get a report back, and we'll take those other two things forward.
confirm I've got a full note of all of the points that have been raised. The key point is there will be a report to the next meeting of this committee addressing all of the issues, including the performance and the financial information and due consideration of the governance issues that arise from the discussion this morning. Thank you.
Move on to item 10, Civic Government Act 1982, Remit of Civic Government Licensing Panel. I think this is one just to bring the remit up to scratch, to incorporate the things that have been taken on. Mr. Haswell, anything to add?
Nothing to add to the report, Chairman. You're absolutely right. We're looking, there are a few issues before the Council in relation, particularly taxing private hire car licensing, where we need to do some modernisation of the systems. And I'm really asking members to give a remit to the panel to deal with that.
Councillor McCaughtrey.
Can I just ask where we are on the legislation that's going through Holyrood at the moment, vis-a-vis mainly to do with private hires and various other tidying up of the previous act? Where are we in that, do you know?
I am not aware that it is moving very quickly, sir. I did check on that several weeks ago to be told that it was still being discussed at official levels by Scottish Government officials. I know that Solus and Solar have both been pressing for reviews of it. There are a number of issues arising, but I think notwithstanding the fact that the Government are going to be addressing the thing in the future, I think for the security and safety of people in Dumfries and Galloway, we should be looking at it as a council, and that's hence the reason that I've come forward with it, Chairman.
Might be worthwhile asking Billy Taylor if he could just check up on that one and answer back to Councillor McCaughtrey. Tom?
I'm happy with that, because I think one thing we haven't done for a while is met with the taxi operators, and that was always a good thing to do, meet them in Stranraer and Dumfries, because I know they do have concerns about the way we're operating, about the lack of consistency in certain areas.
With that, can we agree the recommendations? Move on to item 11, Windermere Road upgrade. Mr. Green.
Chairman, this is very much a report asking members to agree to a number of land transactions which are tied up with the upgrade of Windermere Road, in which the Council has put a considerable investment. Hopefully the report is self-explanatory. We have managed to achieve agreement with all of the landowners, and it's been quite a struggle, as I'm quite sure the local members will testify, to get this thing forward. But we're merely asking members to agree to enter into the necessary property transactions to enable us to proceed and conclude this matter.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just welcome this report. This appears to be the final piece in the jigsaw that will allow us to actually start the delayed construction on Windermere Road. And so really just want confirmation that once this is agreed today, what the construction start date will be on Windermere Road. Hopefully it'll be in the next couple of weeks.
Approval today lets us enter into the legal agreement with the relevant parties, and thereafter we'll be able to get started on site as soon as we possibly can. I would hope this is on site in June, but I'm happy to come back to you with a programme on that, to give you a bit of comfort on start date and finish date.
Councillor Crowther.
Thanks. No, it's pretty much been said, and happy to receive updates as appropriate. But I thought that was the point. This was about just land transactions. Let's go ahead. It's no financial gain to the council or anything like that. Just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Happy to go with the recommendation.
No one's otherwise minded. We go to the recommendations. Agree recommendations? It's 12:30. Usually we stop for lunch, but we have one item left. Do we wish to carry on, or? Right. Move on to the second time of going to item 13. Adopt the resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of paragraphs of Part 178 of Local Government Scotland Act 73, detailed as paragraph 1. Members happy to agree that? Right. No public in.